Can negative spirits, malevolent entities influence us? Can they influence us at the highest levels of government? Is everything on the other side rosy, as many people think? Perhaps not. That's what we're going to dive into today. Hi, my name is Jock, and this is Deadly Departed. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's been such a long time since I've done anything on my own. And actually, it's probably been a couple of years. And myself and Craig obviously made an announcement recently that we were coming back with a different setup and that we were going to be looking at doing more interviews and having panels, etc. But I would still be coming on and doing my Deadly Departed thing. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm delighted to be back. It's been such a long time. And I know I've received many emails from people all over that have asked me, when's it coming back? When are you bringing more people on? And that you've really enjoyed it. And so my apologies for being away for so long. So, and I didn't know what was going to come back with. I was kind of, what am I going to talk about? I've been away for so long. I haven't done any lessons. It's been a couple of years since I had COVID and lost all interest in doing anything after that. I wondered what I was going to ask. And so recently I had a question that came in, a couple of questions, and it kind of made me think, this is what I'm going to launch this platform off. This is what I'm going to talk about, because the questions I've had is can evil spirits, can negative spirits influence us? And that's actually important. That's an important question. Whether the influence in the world can be thought of as a negative influence, an evil influence, whether you believe in it or not. So that's exactly what we're jumping into. And the first thing I'll say is that there's a misunderstanding. There's a misunderstanding about evil. There's a misunderstanding about negative spirits. There's many mediums out there in the spiritualist community will say that evil doesn't exist, that negative spirits don't exist, that demons don't exist. And it kind of brings me back to this idea, whether God created evil and whether it's that creation and therefore is God necessarily evil? No, it doesn't matter what religion you come from. This is a kind of story of Albert Einstein, who apparently really destroyed the argument of a professor. Now, the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that story is really just an anecdote. There is nothing to do in Einstein's history that it was ever real. There's no documents, there's no research papers, there's no journals of Einstein where he actually argues this with this professor. So really, what is really thought about is that argument that's supposed to be about the existence of evil was thought up from somebody else, but it's brilliant. And it kind of goes basically that the professor was saying that God then is evil and God created evil and therefore must be evil in nature. And so Einstein, we all know that it wasn't Einstein, said, well, that's not necessarily true, because the reality is that evil is really just the imbalance, is just the distance created between God and man. The evil is the absence of God, the absence of good. So really, and it's like cold is the absence of heat. So, and darkness doesn't exist because it's the absence of light. So in that kind of argument, now I could have read out the whole story, but in that kind of argument, and I'll maybe put a link down to where I might have found that story actually, and you can look at it in the history of it. It is interesting, and it's a brilliant little kind of parable, if you like, about it. But it's not true. It wasn't Einstein. But it does kind of fall into this pattern of, well, maybe people in the spiritualist community are right. Yes, they are. The evil is the distance that between good. There's a disconnect there. There's a polarity, an opposite. And I've said many times that with opposites, we only know good because we know evil. We only know pain because we know health. We only know the opposite, because that's the way it is. That's duality. That's a karmic law. We're talking about dualism here. But the reality is that in physics and nature, it's true. Really, we only know cold because it is the absence of heat. You take it out, and that's how it is cold. And the light is the same as you take light away and we have darkness. So it's the absence of something. So in the respect that people will say evil doesn't exist, maybe the spiritualists, maybe they're right. Maybe they're right only in that respect. But that again is just a theory, and that again, and it's fact in physics. But whether you believe in an evil spirit, whether you believe in it or not, it doesn't. There's no real predication that's attributed to evil spirit. It doesn't. Their existence doesn't rely on your belief. We know from many, many, many different philosophies, if you like, from the other side, teachings that have come from the other side, that there are evil spirits, that are influencing spirits that do affect us. And I wrote an article about this a long time ago in New Dawn magazine. And if anybody wants to read that article, then just message me and I'll give you the password, because it sits on my website and you can access that article and read it. And that was about the evil influence in the world. That was about, can negative spirits or evil spirits influence us at government level? Now, I actually believe that's true, right? I do believe that's true. And the many questions have come in since the war in Ukraine has been, Jock, do we think there's evil spirits there? Or what about murders? What about suicides? What about the atrocities that happen in the world? Could it be that even in government that there's negative spirits that influence us, even in religion? So, people have asked me as well, could there be in the Vatican, could there be an evil influence in there? And of course, my answer to that is absolutely, because I do not deny the existence of an evil force. I do not deny the existence of a malevolent intelligence, because I'd be very foolhardy to do that. As I said before, you don't, just because you don't believe in an evil spirit existing, or you don't believe in demons, doesn't mean that they don't exist. Their existence is not predicated by your belief system, right? It doesn't matter. If you didn't believe that the sun was in the sky, it's still going to be there whether you don't believe it or not. If you don't believe that the grass is green and you swear blind that it's blue, and that is your belief system, then its existence is not relative to your belief. So the reality is that, it's up to you what you want to believe. But there's more evidence than not that there's evil influence in the world, and there's more evidence than not that a lot of atrocities could be attributed to spiritual influence. We've talked about the misunderstanding, but let's talk about the type of influences that can happen. So you can have a very simple influence, right? You could be influenced by a spirit. We do know that spirits maybe that can influence the other side for just silly things, right? You could be influenced. We have spirit attachments. I've talked about this in other videos. I've talked about this in other episodes. We can be influenced for simple things. If you're an alcoholic, you can feel that you can be influenced. In 30 Years Among the Dead by Dr. Wickland, he talks about this influence that happens all the time. And there's many, and Edith Fiore, many years brought out a book about, obsession and spiritual influence. There's many patterns to influence, and there's many papers, and we've got to understand that the problem of obsession or possession or evil influence in the world or in people has existed in every single belief system, right? From Christianity, believe in it. From in Muslim, again, they believe in it. We have, jinn influence. From Buddhism, there's influence. I mean, that's a bit, they do believe in it, but they wouldn't admit it. In Native American culture, we have the belief of evil spirits, negative spirits. Way back to the day in Mesopotamia and history, we have a pattern of belief in negative spirits and belief in demonic beings. And as I've said many, many times before, I tend to like to use the term malevolent intelligence rather than using the term demon or ghost or whatever, not ghost, but demon, because that brings a lot of misunderstanding into reality. And then, of course, you've got priests in the Catholic Church that see demons everywhere, absolutely everywhere, in your bloody burger or in the restaurant or everywhere, influencing you. Now, to some extent, that I believe is a bit ridiculous to see demonic beings or evil influences in everywhere. But what I will say, I know from my work and from my years of doing this that malevolent intelligences are real. And yes, the answer to the question for all of you out there that have asked me is that I do believe, and I don't like to use the word actually belief, because that's kind of basically saying that I believe in somebody else's perception or attachments. I like to use the term knowing. So I do know there is negative influence. I do know that there's malevolent intelligences. And those malevolent intelligences are far more intelligent than we are. I mentioned this in my book, Deadly Departed. This is why I wrote Deadly Departed, to wake people up to the fact that there is negativity on the other side of life in the spirit world. Everything in the garden is not rosy. And whether you're a spiritualist medium who believes that there is no evil, maybe in your head you've got, it's just the absence of light. That's fine. That's fine. And in that respect, you're right. But it doesn't, your belief in it does not take away the fact that this exists. It doesn't take away the fact that we have these atrocities in the world. And even through free will, people will argue the point of free will. I know for a fact that malevolent spirits, malevolent evil spirits can influence man. And do I think they're at the level of government? And absolutely. I'd be a fool not to. I wrote about it and when I was asked to write the article for New Dawn magazine. Again, write to me and I'll give you access to it so you can read it. It's a great article. But I also feel that there's spiritual influence in people's lives when they're depressed, when they're taking drugs. Think about some of these atrocities. People have asked me questions about people who carry out shootings and all sorts, and do I think that perhaps evil spirits have influenced them? I do think that. I do think that there's some influence at that level. I also do feel as well, from a scientific point of view and from a medical point of view, that some people have mental imbalance, psychological imbalance, and that psychological imbalance can go right into beyond even psychosis, going into, people being, manic depressives that could be influenced and then they carry out atrocities. I know I wrote about a case where, in Deadly Departed, where there was a murder in Italy and one in Scotland as well. And I felt that had been an evil influence. So yeah, I do believe with all my heart that spirits can influence us if we don't have a spiritual foundation and we're spiritually weak. Then I believe that you can be influenced. It's important to be able to learn to discern, but it's also important to have a spiritual foundation in your life. Now, people will then say, well, what about, skeptics? They don't believe in anything, but that doesn't mean that they don't have influence. It doesn't mean, who knows? They could be influenced to be skeptical. That's me probably throwing a dartboard throwing a dartboard blindfolded, but you get the point. I'm just trying to make a simple point here. You don't have to believe in something for it to exist. Whether you believe or not, it does exist. And I do think that we have these evil influences or malevolent influences that can influence someone to take their own life. I also think that we have influences at government levels. Even if they go to church, it doesn't matter. We can be influenced. Look in history. Padre Pio, who was a Catholic, who's now, beatified Catholic saint, had gone through terrible beatings from demonic beings and physically witnessed, the phenomena was witnessed. We have other cases. In America, we've got cases throughout the world where there has been physical harm. There has been phenomena that goes beyond the realm of science. So if that can happen, and we know that there is a crossover, we have loving spirits that come and give us evidence from the other side. I also believe that we have a lot of mediums are talking to negative spirits and getting information, and because that information is there. So I believe that there's a power in our discernment, and people don't understand how to discern an evil spirit or how to understand the mechanics of how that works. So an influence from an evil spirit to someone to take their life or even to carry out a murder. There's been so many murders that I look at, and I look at the case and I think, you know, there's a bit of obsession there. There's probably cases where the evil influences has influenced that individual to carry out that atrocity. Now, in reality, demonic beings cannot kill any humans. They can't just go about killing people, but they can influence, right? And that influence, if they influence a will, it means there's an interference in that free will. And that person who gives over their free will or loses that will can come under the influence of a demonic being or a malevolent intelligence, if you like. And therefore, that then can be the catalyst to atrocity. You know, there's a saying, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And one person will say that that person is evil and they've been influenced by evil, but they believe they're doing good. There's a massive misunderstanding and imbalance in that. But anything that goes against the grain of the beauty in nature, of love in reality in the world of spirit, is essentially that belief or that idea that love and divinity or God, the evil, is just exactly as Einstein or that theory was, is the distance between light or the distance between one other opposite polarity. The take away the light and you've got dark, take away the heat and you've got cold, and that's what it is. So in that respect, guys, yeah, it's a bit of an illusion, but yes, evil does exist. Yes, evil spirits can influence people to take other people's lives. Yes, malevolent intelligences, I no doubt, are operating at the highest levels of government and society. And so that's why it's so important, I think, that we have a real strong foundation, not a religious foundation, but a spiritual foundation, or connection with divinity, or connection with the divine, so that we are able to discern between that which is light and that which is dark. To discern the misalignment or the absence of light that creates the dark. And that's something that's not easy to do, but it's something that's really important. So think about it, guys. Think about what it really means when you see all these things out in the world, when you see all these atrocities, when you hear about the shootings and you hear about the murders. And it brings a question as well, right? Think about this. It brings the question, and this is a kind of legal thing you think about. If indeed the person was influenced by an evil spirit, and this is going to create a massive argument, or is going to create a bit of discussion. Is that individual who carried out that atrocity, are they guilty, or because they were influenced? We have no way of proving it, right? We can't prove it in a court of law. It's impossible. We can't really do that. It's the same as this. We can't really prove mediumship in a court of law because, we have great mediums that have brought through evidence that can, help to convict murderers or gave information that led to a murder conviction. But you can't take it into a courtroom because it doesn't add up. It's not within the realms of man's law, right? Divine law and man's law is completely different. And divine law is perfect in its operation. Man's law isn't. It's fallible. if you think about that, there's no way of proving it, but it does make you think. It makes you think, well, if that person was influenced to carry out that atrocity, was it the evil spirit that's at fault, or is it that person? Where does that come into it? That's something that I can't answer, but it's something that I've thought about for a long, long time. And I still contemplate it because, where does the blame exist? For me, guys, I am very aware that there's evil intelligences and malevolent intelligences in the world, and I'm very aware that they have influence at the highest levels of government and at the lowest levels of nature in our world, and our spiritual foundation is the armor and the shield that we have to be able to help us to learn to discern that. I do think that a lot of suicides are at the hands of influence. I think a lot of the atrocities in the world are at the hands of malevolent influence, and I think a lot of this misunderstanding of free will is also a cause to it. So I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know in any of the chats. Message me or connect with me on YouTube or on Instagram. Ask me a question. Tell me what your thoughts are. Do you think that wars, that murders, that all of this can be attributed to evil influence or malevolent intelligences? Let me know. I'm glad to be back, ladies and gentlemen. I will be bringing in more guests, as you know that myself and Craig will be doing a lot more co-hosting as well. And just to let you know, I got a new podcast to starting. This will be the Pillars of Grief podcast. It'll be coming out very soon. If you want to sign up for it, it's Pillars of Grief podcast. No, wait a minute. POGpodcast.com or pillarsofgriefpodcast.com. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can get that. That's going to be mainly about my research over the years in grief and everything I've been dealing with. And I've got a lot of different guests that'll be coming in there as well. It's not about mediums and readings or anything else. It's actually really about research and understanding grief from that concept. So that's coming up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being with me. This is Jock. This is Deadly Departed. We're back. There's a lot more coming up, a lot more episodes. Please keep subscribing, keep messaging me, and I shall see you very soon in the next one. God bless. Bye-bye.